The Economist's home of narrative journalism and the human stories behind the headlines. If you're enjoying this film, why not take out a subscription to The Economist?
In the world of heists, some crimes are so well executed that they leave everyone in awe. This was one of them. The heist of the century wasn't your typical robbery, but a mind-boggling operation that defied every expectation. A group of seemingly ordinary criminals, led by a master strategist, infiltrated one of the most secure banks in the world, leaving no trace of their presence behind. With careful planning, expert timing, and the perfect blend of technology and psychology, they pulled off a heist that still baffles investigators today. How did they manage to outsmart the system? Let's dive into the incredible story of how they pulled it off. The unlikely masterminds. At first glance, the criminals behind the heist seemed far from what you would expect from such an elaborate crime. The group wasn't made up of hardened criminals or notorious gangsters, but rather a collection of individuals with seemingly ordinary lives. Their leader, a former con artist who had spent years perfecting his skills, was the true genius behind the operation. Despite his past, he had always stayed under the radar, never drawing attention to himself, and used his knowledge of deception and manipulation to recruit a team of skilled professionals. The rest of the crew came from various backgrounds, each bringing a unique expertise that made the heist possible. One was a hacker who could manipulate digital systems and bypass security protocols, while another was a former security consultant who knew exactly how to exploit weaknesses in surveillance and alarm systems. A third member was an expert in psychology, capable of predicting human behavior and using this insight to avoid detection. Together, they formed an unlikely but highly effective team, operating in the shadows while preparing for one of the most audacious heists in criminal history. The perfect plan. The brilliance of the heist lay in its meticulous planning.
It was rage at the people who were laughing at the crime, laughing and applauding at the crime,
which took months of preparation and attention to detail. Instead of relying on violence or traditional methods, the criminals focused on exploiting the bank's weaknesses in security systems. They began by hacking into the vault's surveillance cameras, allowing them to monitor movements inside the building without being detected. Additionally, they studied the bank's alarm systems, identifying the precise moments when they could disable or bypass them without triggering any alerts. This in-depth knowledge of the security infrastructure gave them the ability to move with precision and stealth. The crew's understanding of the building's daily routines also played a critical role in the heist's success. They tracked the schedules of security guards and key personnel, identifying their breaks and when they would be most vulnerable. They even manipulated the timing of the bank's daily operations to ensure that the heist took place during a quiet period when there would be minimal risk of encountering customers or staff. This careful orchestration, combined with their ability to stay under the radar, made their plan one of the most well-thought-out and sophisticated heists ever executed. The inside man. The key to the criminal's success was the inside man, a trusted employee who worked within the bank and had access to critical information. This individual was crucial to the entire operation, as they had insider knowledge about the bank's security protocols, daily routines, and operational weaknesses. For months, the inside man subtly gathered and provided detailed information to the crew, ensuring they knew exactly when to strike, what security measures to bypass, and how to avoid suspicion. His position within the bank allowed him to observe without raising any red flags, making him the perfect mole for the operation. The inside man's role wasn't just limited to sharing information. He was also responsible for facilitating key parts of the plan from within the bank. On the day of the heist, he played a pivotal role by deactivating security systems, ensuring that surveillance cameras went offline at the right moments and that alarm systems were temporarily disabled. He was able to make sure that the guards' movements aligned perfectly with the crew's schedule, and his intimate knowledge of the bank's layout helped them avoid any unexpected complications. His betrayal ultimately became one of the most shocking and pivotal moments of the heist, and without him, the plan would have never come to fruition. The execution. On the day of the heist, the crew's flawless planning came to life in a meticulously timed operation. Disguised as maintenance workers, the criminals entered the bank well before it opened to customers, taking advantage of the quiet early hours. Their disguises helped them blend in with the building's regular staff, allowing them to move through the premises undetected. As they made their way through the building, the inside man ensured that the security systems were disabled without raising any alarms. The team worked quickly, bypassing the surveillance cameras and moving toward the vault with precision. Within hours, they had cracked open the vault, accessing millions of dollars in cash and precious gems, all while remaining unnoticed by the few remaining employees in the building. The timing was critical. Every move was calculated to perfection. They knew the exact length of time they had before the first shift of guards arrived and began to check the building. With the loot in hand, the crew executed their escape, leaving no traces behind except for a few subtle clues. The entire operation was an extraordinary feat of coordination and cunning, and the criminals walked away with an impressive haul, leaving authorities stunned by how seamlessly it all unfolded. The unexpected twist. As the crew began their escape, everything seemed to be going according to plan. However, an unexpected twist almost derailed their perfect crime. One of the security guards, who was supposed to be on break, unexpectedly returned to the vault area earlier than anticipated. This could have led to a confrontation, blowing their cover and alerting the authorities. The criminals had accounted for such scenarios, but this encounter was more dangerous than they had planned for. The tension was high as they scrambled to neutralize the guard without leaving behind any evidence or raising alarms. In a calm and calculated move, the crew swiftly handled the situation, subduing the guard without injury and making sure he was none the wiser about what had transpired. The guard was left unconscious but unharmed, and the criminals continued with their escape without further incident. This near miss, however, would later become a critical piece of evidence in the investigation. Investigators would connect the dots between the guard's unusual behavior and the criminal activity, ultimately helping law enforcement build a more detailed understanding of the heist, even though the crew had executed their escape flawlessly in that moment. The long hunt and unsolved mystery. Despite the criminals' flawless execution, their escape didn't mark the end of the story. Authorities launched a massive manhunt to track down the perpetrators, scouring every lead and sifting through the few pieces of evidence they had. The inside man was eventually caught, and his arrest revealed critical details about the operation, but the rest of the crew remained elusive. The authorities tried to follow the trail, but with no solid witnesses or substantial evidence, they found themselves at a standstill. Surveillance footage was too vague to identify the criminals, and the stolen goods had been laundered through several different channels, making it even harder to trace. Years passed, and although some of the stolen money and jewels were recovered, the mastermind behind the heist and many of his crew members were never apprehended. The case became one of the most intriguing unsolved heists in history, with experts and investigators continuing to analyze the crime in hopes of uncovering new clues. Despite the efforts, the criminals disappeared without a trace, leaving behind a trail of mystery that still fascinates true crime enthusiasts and investigators alike. The question remains, will they ever be caught, or did they really pull off the perfect crime? The mystery endures, keeping the story of the heist alive in the public's mind. And so, the heist of the century remains an unsolved mystery, a testament to the criminal brilliance and audacity of those who pulled it off. Despite the authorities' tireless efforts, the masterminds behind the crime remain free, their identities hidden in the shadows. The meticulous planning, the near-perfect execution, and the unexpected twists that nearly unraveled it all continued to captivate the imagination. While some of the stolen treasures were recovered, the question still lingers: was this the perfect crime? The mystery may never be fully solved, but it will forever remain one of the most daring heists in history.